Hello everyone. Today we are going to be discussing how to organize your information in a technical document. The information that we used for this presentation was found in Chapter 7 of Mike Markel's Technical Communication textbook. We have two major topics that we would like to discuss during this presentation. The first topic is the 3 principles for organizing technical information, and our second is to discuss the topic of the 8 basic organizational patterns. After we introduce these topics, we are going to go into the details of each of these topics. There are 3 principles for organizing your information in a technical document. The first one is to analyze your audience and your purpose. The second one is to use conventional patterns of organization. And the third is to display your organizational pattern prominently. It is very important to analyze your purpose before you start writing a document. If you do not understand what the purpose of the document is, then that makes it very difficult to understand what you're supposed to be writing about. You also need to analyze your audience before you start writing. It is important to know who your audience is because they can help you to figure out what kind of format you should use when you're writing your document. 4 things that you should ask yourself about your document's organization are: does the text follow any kind of organization that the company would like you to? Are the introductions and conclusions present in the kind of information that you would expect? Does the text appear to be organized linearly? And does the text use headings? Using conventional patterns of organization is an easier way to prepare a technical document. The first step to using a conventional pattern is to determine if there is a conventional pattern that you could use that fits your needs. If a conventional pattern exists for your needs, then use it. These patterns of organization are meant to help writers organize their writing in a format similar to a template or a checklist. Having a checklist or a template to go by makes any kind of task easier. That includes writing. These patterns of organization may call for some modification. These patterns are not always going to perfectly fit the needs that you have. Therefore, modification is going to be necessary. Using the conventional patterns of organization can be compared to when a light goes out in a typical ceiling fan. When a light goes out in a ceiling fan, would you rather replace the whole fan or just replace the light bulb? I feel like most people would say that they would rather just replace the light bulb because it's easier, it takes less time, and it will save you money. The same is true with these patterns of organization. If you decide to use these patterns, they could save you time, effort, and the company that you are working for money. Making sure that the organization of your document is clear is an important part of writing technical documents. It is important because it helps the audience to be able to figure out how your information comes together. 3 ways that you can make sure that you are clearly showing the organization of your documents is by following these 3 steps. Create a detailed table of contents, use headings liberally, and use topic sentences at the beginning of your paragraphs. A detailed table of contents can help your readers to be able to find the things that they want to without having to read the whole document if they don't want to. Headings help break up the topics so that readers will be able to know where one topic ends and the next topic begins. Topic sentences at the beginning of the paragraphs help the readers to be able to understand what they should be getting out of the following paragraph. There are 8 basic organizational patterns. These consist of chronological, spatial, general to specific, more important to less important, comparison and contrast, classification and partition, problem, method, solution, and cause and effect. The first basic organizational pattern that we would like to present to you is chronological. When using this format, you can organize the information in the order that it occurred or in the reverse order that it occurred. There are three things that can help you write an effective chronological document. These things are providing signposts, considering using graphics to complement the text, and analyzing the events where it is appropriate to. Signposts are words such as step, phase, stage, and part. These types of words are good for showing when things took place relative to another. Other good words to use are then, next, first, and finally. Flowcharts is one of the many specific examples of the type of graphics that you would want to have in a chronological document. This type of graphic shows the audience the order that a series of events has occurred. It would also be good to describe why things occurred the way that they occurred, if we're talking about in the past tense, or how they are going to occur, or how you're planning on them occurring, if you're talking about something that's going to happen in the future. This helps the audience to be able to see the bigger picture. The next organizational method that I would like to present to you is spatial organization. This method describes objects in physical locations. For example, it would describe the design of a new tablet, or where something is located in relative to something else. There are three suggestions that can help you write effective spatial documents. They are providing signposts, considering using graphics to complement the text, and analyzing events wherever that may be appropriate. Most of these steps are the same as the chronological organization pattern, but they are used in slightly different ways. The signposts for spatial organization documents could be used to describe a location, for example, in the middle, or they would also describe features of the tablet, or whatever other object you might be describing. These signposts should be used to make sure that the audience sees a clear picture of what you're trying to describe. You can also do that with diagrams, drawings, photos, and maps. You also need to make sure that you are ready to explain the product or the scene that you're talking about in your document to the audience. General to specific is the next type of organizational pattern that I would like to present to you. This way of organizing a document is used when the audience needs a general understanding of what is being presented before they hear all of the details that are going to be presented about the topic. An example of this would be when an engineer needs to try to sell a heat exchanger designed for a refrigerator to a purchasing committee for a company that makes refrigerators. It is not likely that the purchasing committee will know much about heat exchangers, other than that they would want to have one that is very efficient and can improve the efficiency of the refrigerator. When the engineer is explaining the heat exchanger, they need to start with the basic information and then work up to the more complicated details. Some tools that can be used to help the engineer to explain the function of the heat exchanger to the committee would be to have some pictures or diagrams of the heat exchanger to show them what it looks like, and to be able to explain the function of each of the components of the heat exchanger. Another useful organizational pattern is more important to less important. This method recognizes that the audience primarily wants to hear the important information. It is important to state that you are starting with the most important information and then sharing the less important information so that the audience will know what type of organization you are using. Do not just say that they are ordered from most important to least important, but be able to explain why some of the things are more important than others. Diagrams and number lists can help show the different levels of importance of the topics discussed.
The next organizational pattern is comparison and contrast. You can use comparison and contrast to discuss two or more items. The first thing you need to do when using this method is to determine your criteria. You can discuss all the factors related to one item and then discuss the factors related to the next item. For example, talk about all factors related to dogs and then all factors related to cats, or discuss one factor as it relates to all items, then another factor as it relates to all items. You can discuss the sounds, dogs bark and cats purr, then move on to discuss their ability to climb. Dogs can't climb, cats can't climb. There are two typical patterns for organizing by comparison and contrast: whole by whole and part by part. A whole by whole comparison looks at the entire picture of each option. For example, if you're buying a camera, you might look at the price and the pixels, but you focus on one brand at a time. Part by part allows you to focus on the criteria, so you'd focus on price and then pixels. Part by part is best for detailed comparisons and contrast. When using the comparison and contrast method, you establish criteria. Evaluate the items according to the criteria you identified. Organize your discussion and consider using graphics to complement the text. Remember ethical considerations and be sure to accurately represent items when comparing them and contrasting them. The next method is classification or partition. Classification systems assign items into certain categories, such as a large breeded dog or a small breeded dog, or venomous or non-venomous snakes. Partition is a process of breaking a single unit into smaller units. For example, a home theater system is a complete unit, but it can be broken into smaller units. A television, speakers, a DVD player, and other parts. The partition system of organization is often used in equipment catalogs or technical brochures. When you're going to use a classification or partition system, remember these suggestions. Choose a basis of classification or partition that fits your audience and purpose. Use only one basis of classification or partition at a time. In other words, if you're classifying a computer based on cost, don't include monitor size. Avoid any overlap. That means to be sure if items fit into one category, be inclusive. For example, be sure to include all components of a home theater system. Don't leave out the speakers. If you do, explain why you left them out. Arrange the categories into logical sequence. And consider using graphics to complement your text. Problems, method, solution is our next organizational pattern. Use this method when you want to discuss the past, present, and future. You can discuss a problem such as the recent drop in sales at your restaurant, what you're going to do about it, such as taste the food on the menu, and then the solution, which is a change you might make, maybe a new menu or a new cook. Remember these suggestions using the problem, method, solution pattern. Be clear and specific in describing the problem and be sure your readers understand your method. They need to understand what you did and why you did it. Don't overstate your solution. For example, don't say your profits are going to increase by 25% if you hire a new chef. Say there's potential for a 25% increase in profits. You don't want to make a promise you cannot deliver. Use logical sequence. The best thing to do is start with the problem, move to the next method, then on to the solution. And once again, consider using graphics such as flowcharts to clarify your information. Graphics can be a great way to help your reader understand your message if used properly. The final organizational pattern is cause and effect. Many times technical communication involves cause and effect discussions. Sometimes you consider the cause first and then speculate about the effects. For example, if I study for this test, I will make an A. Sometimes you consider the effect and try to identify the cause. I failed my test. I wonder if it's because I didn't study. Or is there another reason? Could it be because I didn't sleep well last night? Cause and effect relationships can present a challenge to describe, because you can't prove why something happens, but you can explain the factors involved. The more information you have about the subject, the more insightful you can be. Remember these guidelines when organizing your information by cause and effect. Explain yourself clearly. Avoid overstating your argument. Avoid logical fallacies or post hoc reasoning For example, there must be something wrong with the oil they put in my car. Ever since it had been changed, the engine has been knocking. It could have been the oil, or it could be something else that's wrong with the engine. And remember to consider using graphics. We have covered all the organizational patterns. Let's conclude by summarizing. We have talked about 3 principles for organizing technical information. They are to analyze your audience and purpose, to use conventional patterns of organization, and to display your organizational pattern prominently. There are 8 different organizational patterns: chronological, spatial, general to specific, more important to less important, comparison and contrast, classification or partition, problem method solution, and cause and effect. You need to consider your audience and your purpose before deciding which method is best for you. Proper organization will help you to produce a great technical document. We hope you found this information useful and that you will be able to use it to help you in writing technical documents. Thank you. Please let us know if you have any questions.